The first wave came on a Wednesday. The world had been on edge for weeks, with rumors of unidentified ships appearing on the fringes of the solar system. Most people dismissed the sightings as hoaxes, exaggerated by fringe conspiracy theorists. But when the news hit, no one could deny it anymore. Massive alien ships, kilometers long, entered Earth's orbit and hovered like ominous black shadows blotting out the stars. I watched from my balcony in disbelief as the media scrambled to cover the invasion. Every channel flickered with footage of the alien fleet sleek, dark crafts floating like silent predators above the planet. No message, no demands, just silence. "They're here," my brother Jason said, standing beside me. He was clutching his rifle, knuckles white. He'd always been a military man, but now his confidence seemed to evaporate in the face of the unknown. "They haven't attacked yet," I muttered, my voice hoarse. "Maybe they don't want to." Jason shook his head. "They're not here for a chat. They've blocked out every satellite. Communications are jammed. It's only a matter of time." And then it happened. A blinding flash erupted in the distance, over what used to be New York City. The lights vanished, swallowed by a cloud of dust, smoke, and debris. Jason tensed. "Tactical nuke," he said grimly. "They just took out Manhattan." The invasion had begun. By the time the second wave arrived, the world had plunged into chaos. Governments scrambled to launch counterattacks, but every effort was met with crushing failure. The Kruthon Dominion, as they called themselves, were unlike anything humanity had faced. Their technology was far beyond ours: energy shields that could shrug off missiles, plasma weapons that vaporized tanks, and a fleet that seemed invincible. Yet, amidst the chaos, something strange started happening. The Kruthon ground forces landed in key cities around the globe: London, Paris, Beijing, and more. They deployed their elite soldiers, towering, armored figures that marched through the streets, cutting through human resistance like a scythe through wheat. But after only a few hours, reports started trickling in. Alien soldiers collapsing mid-mission, units going mad, attacking one another, erratic behavior, strange seizures, and sudden deaths. At first, we thought it was sabotage, maybe some last-ditch human retaliation. But soon, the pattern became clear. It wasn't anything we had done. It was the air itself. By the end of the first week, the Kruthon advance had slowed to a crawl. Their once unstoppable legions were faltering. Entire battalions of their soldiers were found dead in the streets, their massive frames twisted in unnatural ways. The human resistance, previously on the brink of annihilation, found themselves regrouping. Soldiers took to the streets, cautiously advancing on what had become abandoned alien positions. No one knew exactly what had happened. It wasn't until a group of scientists, holed up in an underground lab in Colorado, uncovered the truth. I remember the report vividly because I was one of the first to read it. I had connections in the defense network, and my job as a military analyst granted me access to classified information. The scientist had managed to capture one of the Kruthon alive barely. The alien was convulsing, babbling in its strange tongue, its once imposing form now frail and broken. After extensive tests, the truth became clear: Earth's atmosphere was poisoning them. To humans, the mix of nitrogen, oxygen, and trace gases in our air was perfectly harmless. But to the Kruthon biology, it was lethal: a neurotoxin that attacked their nervous systems, inducing hallucinations, muscle spasms, and eventually death. Their advanced technology had protected them in space and during their initial descent. But once on the ground, they were exposed, and they hadn't accounted for it. It was humanity's first stroke of luck in the war. Our atmosphere was killing them, slowly but surely. "Are we sure about this?" I asked Jason a week later as we gathered in the bunker, surrounded by military brass and government officials. Maps of the globe were pinned to the walls, showing where the Kruthon had landed and where they had mysteriously pulled back. Jason's face was grim as he nodded. "The science checks out. Every captured Kruthon shows the same symptoms. Their bodies can't handle our air. It's like cyanide to them." But if that's true, why are they still fighting? Why not retreat? I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something. Jason shrugged. His brow furrowed in thought. They're desperate. They've spent resources, time, and lives to get here. Maybe they didn't think we'd figure it out, or maybe they're trying to find a way to adapt. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. We had a weapon, one we hadn't even realized we possessed. But the question was, how far were we willing to go to use it? The next few months were a blur of chaos and brutal fighting. With the Kruthon weakened, humanity mounted a fierce counteroffensive. The atmosphere was on our side, but it wasn't enough to secure victory. The Kruthon adapted. They deployed advanced filtration systems, modified their troops with cybernetic enhancements, and wore heavy, airtight suits that allowed them to fight in our environment for longer periods. Still, they couldn't shake the fact that Earth's air was toxic to them. Every breach in their armor, every damaged filter, meant death. And humanity, seeing an opportunity, began to weaponize its own air. The military developed new tactics, creating zones where oxygen levels were artificially manipulated to be even more deadly to the Kruthon. They created traps, luring alien forces into areas where the atmosphere was too thin or too thick for them to survive. Entire cities were turned into death traps for the invading forces. The cost was high. Millions of humans died in the conflict. Cities were razed to the ground. But for the first time, we had hope. We had a chance. I'll never forget the day we took back Washington, D.C. The once majestic capital had been reduced to rubble, with the skeletal remains of buildings towering over the battlefield. I was part of a tactical unit sent to clear out the last pockets of Kruthon resistance. We advanced cautiously through the ruins, the air thick with dust and the stench of death. My squad was on edge, every shadow a potential ambush. But as we moved closer to the heart of the city, something strange happened. We found them, an entire Kruthon battalion, dead. Their massive bodies lay scattered across the streets, their armor torn open, their faces frozen in grotesque expressions of agony. There had been no battle. No human soldiers had engaged them. They suffocated, Jason muttered, kneeling beside one of the bodies. He lifted the alien's helmet, revealing a cracked air filter. Their own atmosphere killed them. I stared in disbelief. We didn't even have to fire a shot. But as the war dragged on, the Kruthon grew desperate. They deployed new weapons, ones designed to strip away Earth's natural defenses. Giant machines were dropped into key areas, pumping out chemicals meant to neutralize the atmosphere. Their goal was simple: make Earth breathable for them, and uninhabitable for us. It was a race against time. Humanity scrambled to destroy these machines before they could do irreversible damage. Every battle became a brutal contest, fought not just with guns and bombs, but with the air itself. And then, the tide turned. The Kruthon chemical weapons were an abomination. Huge, spidery machines, each the size of a small building, would land in strategic areas and begin altering the local atmosphere. Instead of fighting us head-on, they focused on stripping away the very air we breathed. These devices didn't just pump out chemicals, they disassembled the molecular structure of our atmosphere, releasing compounds that would make it impossible for humans to survive. Our first encounter with one of these machines happened in Chicago. We'd heard of the Kruthon's latest tactics, but we hadn't believed it would be so bad. When the call came through that Chicago was falling, Jason and I were part of the squad that was sent to investigate. What we found was a city in the middle of an environmental disaster. The sky was a sickly green, and the air felt thick, as if you were trying to breathe through a wet rag. Civilians were dying in the streets, gasping for breath as their lungs filled with corrosive gas. But the Kruthon were marching through unaffected, their new filtration systems allowing them to survive in the hellscape they were creating. The sight was unlike anything I had ever seen before. People lay crumpled on the ground, clutching at their throats, eyes wide with terror. The Kruthon's machines loomed overhead, churning out plumes of toxic mist that spread across the city like a death fog. "We have to stop them," I said through gritted teeth, choking on the foul air. "We can't let them keep doing this." Jason nodded grimly, his rifle at the ready. "We will. We're not losing Chicago." The mission was simple: destroy the machines. But executing it was anything but easy. We had to move fast, and every second we spent breathing in the altered atmosphere took a toll on our bodies. Even with gas masks, the air was toxic. Every breath felt like inhaling fire, and every step was a battle against the overwhelming urge to collapse. Our team moved through the twisted ruins of the city, keeping low to avoid detection. The Kruthon had set up defensive positions around the machines, their soldiers patrolling the area with eerie precision. But something was different this time, something off. "They're nervous," Jason whispered, peering through a pair of binoculars at the Kruthon forces ahead. "Look at them." I followed his gaze. He was right. The Kruthon soldiers were agitated, twitchy. They kept glancing at their surroundings, weapons clutched tightly in their hands. It didn't make sense. They had the upper hand, yet they were acting like prey. "They're scared of something," I muttered. But what? Then it hit me, the atmosphere. Even though they had their filtration systems, they were still vulnerable. The very air around them was hostile, and if anything went wrong with their suits, they'd be dead in minutes. The tables had turned, and now they were the ones fighting in an environment they couldn't control. "We can use this," Jason said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "We just need to hit them where it hurts." Our plan was risky, but we didn't have a choice. We split into two teams, one to create a distraction, the other to take out the machines. Jason and I led the assault team, armed with explosives and the grim determination that this was our last shot. The streets were eerily quiet as we approached the first machine. It loomed over us, its metal legs digging into the concrete, churning out noxious fumes. Kruthon soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their glowing visors scanning the area for any sign of movement. "Now," Jason whispered. Our distraction team launched their attack, drawing the Kruthon's attention with a series of well-placed explosions on the other side of the city. The alien forces scrambled to respond, leaving the machine vulnerable. We moved quickly, darting from cover to cover, avoiding the patrols. My heart pounded in my chest as we reached the base of the machine. Its massive form towered above us, belching out thick clouds of gas. I could feel the heat radiating from it, the sound of its engines a constant, deafening roar. "Plant the charges," Jason ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around us. I moved to the base of the machine and began setting the explosives, my hands trembling from the adrenaline and the toxic air. The Kruthon were closing and time was running out. "Come on," I muttered to myself, fumbling with the detonator. Underscore 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 underscore. The first explosion rocked the city, a deafening boom that echoed through the streets. The machine shuddered, its legs buckling as the charges went off. I felt the ground shake beneath my feet as I stumbled back, watching in awe as the massive structure began to collapse in on itself. "We did it," Jason breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. But our victory was short-lived. The Kruthon were quick to respond, and within minutes, their reinforcements arrived. We barely had time to regroup before we were under fire. "Move, get to cover," Jason shouted, pulling me behind a crumbling wall as plasma blasts scorched the air around us. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. But we couldn't stop now. We had to keep going. The next few hours were a blur of gunfire, explosions, and desperate sprints through the decimated city. We lost people, good people. But we managed to take down 2 more machines before the Kruthon forces overwhelmed us. By the time we reached the last machine, we were barely holding on. Jason and I were the only ones left from our team, and both of us were injured, Jason with a deep gash in his leg, and me with a cracked rib that made every breath feel like a knife to the chest. "We're not going to make it," I gasped, clutching my side as we ducked behind a pile of rubble. Jason gritted his teeth, his face pale from blood loss. "We'll make it. We have to." The final machine loomed ahead, belching out its deadly chemicals. Kruthon soldiers swarmed the area, their numbers overwhelming. But we didn't have a choice. If we didn't stop it, Chicago and maybe the entire planet was lost. "We need a plan," I said, my voice hoarse. Jason glanced at me, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I've got one, but you're not going to like it." Jason's plan was insane. But then again, everything about this war was insane. He suggested we go straight for the heart of the machine, disable its core, and let the resulting explosion take out the Kruthon forces in one fell swoop. The problem was, we'd have to get inside the machine to do it, and once we were in, there was no guarantee we'd get out. But it was our only shot. We waited for a lull in the Kruthon patrols before making our move. The machine's legs stretched high above us as we sprinted toward it, our bodies aching, our lungs burning from the toxic air. I could feel the heat from the machine's core as we approached, its engines whirring like some kind of grotesque mechanical beast. Jason reached the control panel first, his fingers flying over the alien controls as he tried to disable the machine's defenses. I kept watch, my heart pounding in my chest as I scanned the area for any sign of Kruthon reinforcements. "Hurry up," I muttered, my finger twitching on the trigger of my rifle. "I'm trying," Jason snapped, sweat dripping down his face. "This thing is more complicated than it looks." Just as I thought we were in the clear, a plasma blast whizzed past my head, searing the wall behind me. "They're here," I shouted, firing back at the advancing Kruthon soldiers. Jason cursed under his breath, his hands moving even faster over the controls. "Just hold them off for a few more seconds." I don't know how we did it, but somehow we managed to hold them off long enough for Jason to finish his work. The machine let out a deafening roar as its core overloaded, sending a shockwave through the city. "Run!" Jason shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me away from the machine as it began to collapse. We sprinted through the streets, dodging debris and plasma fire as the machine exploded behind us, taking the Kruthon forces with it. The blast sent us flying, and I hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. When I opened my eyes, the city was quiet. The machine was gone, reduced to a smoking pile of wreckage. The Kruthon forces were nowhere to be seen. "We did it," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. We barely made it out alive. Jason and I were bruised, battered, and exhausted, but we had done it. Chicago was saved, at least for the moment. The Kruthon's machine had been destroyed, and the city's air, though still thick with smoke and chemicals, was breathable once more. The few civilians who had survived the attack slowly emerged from the ruins, their faces pale and gaunt from the ordeal. I could see the relief in their eyes, mixed with exhaustion and sorrow for the loved ones they had lost. The damage was catastrophic, but there was a glimmer of hope, something we hadn't had in a long time. We gathered in the remnants of what had once been a park. The trees were charred, the grass burned away to ash, but it was still one of the only clearings left in the city. People sat in silence, nursing wounds or comforting each other. Jason and I exchanged a look. We had done our part, but we knew this was just the beginning. The Kruthon wouldn't stop, they'd be back with more machines, and next time we might not be so lucky. "We need to warn the rest of the planet," Jason said, wincing as he sat down beside me, his legs still bleeding from the deep gash. "This isn't over." I nodded, staring at the wreckage of the machine in the distance. It was a grim reminder of what we were up against. "Agreed, but we can't do it alone." A few hours later, a rescue team arrived, taking the remaining civilians and us out of the city. We were flown to a military base outside of Chicago, where the rest of our unit had been regrouping after the battle. It was there, in the war room, that we first met Commander Axel Holt. Commander Holt was a man built like a tank, broad shoulders, square jaw, and a steely gaze that could cut through iron. He was one of the most respected leaders in the Allied forces, known for his no-nonsense attitude and tactical genius. When we walked into the room, he was hunched over a table covered in maps and data readouts, surrounded by a group of military strategists. "You must be the ones who took down the Kruthon machine," he said without looking up, his voice gravelly. "I've been hearing reports. Impressive work." Jason and I exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. "Sir, we did what we had to," Jason said, his tone respectful but firm. "But that machine was just one of many. The Kruthon are going to keep coming, and if we don't find a way to stop them, more cities will fall. Holt finally looked up, his piercing blue eyes locking onto ours. You're right, and that's why we need you. He gestured for us to join him at the table, where a holographic projection of the Earth flickered into view. Red dots marked the locations of Kruthon machines across the globe. Chicago was just one of many. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. We had won a battle, but the war was far from over. These machines are designed to alter planetary atmospheres, Holt explained, his voice grim. They're targeting major population centers, pumping out chemicals that make the air toxic for humans. The Kruthon have found a way to weaponize our own environment against us. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling in my chest. There has to be a way to fight back. There is, Holt said, his gaze hardening. But it's not going to be easy. The plan was audacious, borderline insane. The Kruthon machines weren't just altering Earth's atmosphere, they were gathering data. Every time they deployed a new machine, they analyzed our air composition, our biology, and our weaknesses. And they were learning fast. The longer the machines operated, the more efficient they became at creating an environment hostile to human life. Holt's solution: turn the tables on them. We've been studying the Kruthon's filtration systems, he said, tapping a command into the holographic display. A diagram of one of the alien suits appeared, highlighting the complex filtration unit they use to survive in Earth's atmosphere. These suits are what allow them to breathe in environments that would normally kill them. But they're not foolproof. If we can introduce a contaminant into their systems, something they haven't adapted to, we can take them out from the inside. What kind of contaminant? Jason asked, his eyes narrowing. Holt glanced at one of his scientists, a wiry man named Dr. Klein, who had been silently listening in the corner. Dr. Klein stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. We've been developing a chemical compound, a gas that mimics certain elements of Earth's atmosphere, but with a twist. It's designed to bypass the Kruthon's filtration systems and attack their respiratory systems directly. To us, it's harmless. To them, it's lethal. I raised an eyebrow. You're talking about creating a weaponized version of Earth's atmosphere. Exactly, Klein said, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. The Kruthon came here thinking they could turn our air against us. But they forgot one thing: our atmosphere is as much of a weapon as it is a resource. We're going to make sure they never forget it. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Holt's plan was simple but risky. We would deploy teams across the globe to take out the Kruthon machines using conventional explosives. Once the machines were down, we would introduce the new compound into the atmosphere, targeting Kruthon strongholds and thinning their numbers. It was a long shot, but it was all we had. Jason and I were assigned to one of the strike teams headed for London. The city had been under siege for weeks, and the Kruthon had set up one of their largest machines in the heart of the city. Taking it down would be no easy task, but if we succeeded, it would deal a significant blow to their efforts. As we geared up for the mission, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Kruthon were smarter than this. They had always been one step ahead of us, always adapting faster than we could react. Why would they rely so heavily on machines that could be so easily destroyed? We're missing something, I muttered to Jason as we boarded the transport that would take us to London. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. What do you mean? The Kruthon, they're too smart to rely on just one tactic. These machines, there has to be more to them than we know. What if they're just a distraction? Jason didn't respond for a moment, his gaze distant. Maybe, but we don't have time to figure that out. We do our job, and we trust that the higher-ups know what they're doing. I wanted to believe him, but a nagging doubt gnawed at the back of my mind. Something wasn't right. When we arrived in London, the city was unrecognizable. Skyscrapers lay in ruins, their twisted metal frames jutting out of the ground like the bones of a long-dead giant. The streets were flooded with a thick, green mist, the same toxic fog we had seen in Chicago. But this time, it was worse. Stay sharp, Jason said as we disembarked from the transport, our boots sinking into the cracked asphalt. "We've got reports of heavy Kruthon activity in the area." We moved through the city in silence, the only sound the crunch of debris under our feet and the distant hum of the Kruthon machine, its massive form looming over the skyline like a mechanical god. I could feel the weight of the air pressing down on me, thick with chemicals that made my skin itch and my lungs burn. As we approached the machine, the sense of unease I had been feeling grew stronger. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Hold up," I said, raising a hand to stop the team. "Do you hear that?" Jason frowned, listening intently. "Hear what?" "The machine. It's not making the same sound as the others." Now that I had pointed it out, Jason could hear it too. The machine's engines weren't churning out the same deafening roar we had heard in Chicago. Instead, there was a low, rhythmic hum almost like ... breathing. "What the hell is that?" Jason muttered, his grip tightening on his rifle. I didn't have an answer, but I had a feeling we were about to find out. The hum grew louder as we approached the machine, sending a shiver down my spine. It was nothing like the other Kruthon devices we had encountered. There was something almost organic about it, as if the machine was alive. We crouched behind a collapsed building, our eyes locked on the towering structure before us. The Kruthon had surrounded it with heavy patrols, their spindly figures gliding through the toxic mist, rifles at the ready. We couldn't take them all head-on, it would be suicide. Jason tapped his comms unit, whispering, "Team Alpha, we're in position. What's your status?" A crackle of static, then a voice replied, "We're at the west perimeter. No sign of activity on our end. Ready to move on your signal." Jason glanced at me, his face hidden behind his helmet's visor. "This is it. We take out the Kruthon patrols, plant the explosives, and get the hell out before this thing blows." I nodded, but the nagging doubt that had been gnawing at me since we arrived refused to go away. I had a bad feeling about this mission, but I pushed it aside. We didn't have time for second thoughts. We waited for a break in the patrols, then moved quickly and silently across the open ground, keeping low to avoid detection. The air was thick with the acrid stench of chemicals, and I could feel my skin prickling under the protective suit. Even with the filtration systems in place, the atmosphere was oppressive, weighing heavily on my chest. As we reached the base of the machine, the rhythmic hum grew louder. Up close, I could see that the machine was covered in strange, pulsating veins, dark, sinewy tubes that ran along its surface like blood vessels. I had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just a machine. It was alive. "What the hell is this thing?" Jason muttered, his voice barely audible over the hum. I shook my head, my eyes scanning the structure. "I don't know, but we need to take it down before it figures out we're here." We split up, each of us taking a different section of the machine to plant the explosives. My heart pounded in my chest as I carefully attached the charges, making sure to avoid the strange, pulsating veins. The last thing I wanted was to accidentally trigger whatever was keeping this thing alive. Just as I finished planting the last charge, a voice crackled over the comms. "Team Alpha, we have movement. Kruthon reinforcements incoming from the north. We need to move now." Jason cursed under his breath, his hands moving frantically as he set the timer for the explosives. "We're running out of time. We need to get clear before they swarm us." I nodded, but as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small panel on the side of the machine, slightly ajar, with a faint glow emanating from within. "Wait," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "There's something inside." Jason paused, glancing back at me. "What are you talking about? We need to go." "I know, but what if this is it? What if this is the key to stopping all of them?" I didn't wait for his response. Against my better judgment, I pried open the panel, revealing a small compartment filled with glowing, green liquid. Floating inside were tiny, metallic spheres, each one no larger than a marble, connected by thin strands of some kind of neural wiring. It looked like a miniature version of the machine itself. "What the hell?" I reached out to touch one of the spheres, but the moment my fingers made contact, a shock ran up my arm, causing me to stumble back in pain. Jason grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the panel. "We don't have time for this. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out later. Right now, we need to get out of here before the Kruthon find us." I nodded, my heart racing. He was right. We didn't have time to investigate further. We needed to get clear before the explosives went off. We bolted from the machine, running as fast as we could through the ruined streets of London. The Kruthon patrols had spotted us, and gunfire erupted around us, bullets whizzing past our heads as we sprinted for cover. "Team Alpha, fall back. We're being overrun," Jason shouted into his comms, his voice strained with urgency. We ducked behind a collapsed building, our breaths ragged and heavy. The Kruthon were closing in, their eerie, insect-like forms silhouetted against the thick, green mist. We had seconds before they were on top of us. "How much time until the charges go off?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the sound of gunfire. 30 seconds, Jason replied, his face set in grim determination. "We just need to hold them off until then." I gripped my rifle tightly, my heart pounding in my chest. The Kruthon were relentless, their glowing eyes fixed on us as they advanced. But we held our ground, firing round after round into their ranks. Each shot was met with the sickening thud of alien flesh hitting the ground, but more of them kept coming. The seconds ticked by in agonizing slow motion. Sweat dripped down my face as I emptied my last clip into the advancing Kruthon. They were almost upon us now, their sharp, clawed limbs reaching out to tear us apart. And then, with a deafening explosion, the machine erupted in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave hit us like a freight train, throwing us to the ground as debris and fire rained down around us. For a moment, everything was chaos, the air filled with smoke, fire, and the screams of the dying Kruthon. When the dust finally settled, I struggled to my feet, my ears ringing from the explosion. The machine was gone, reduced to a smoldering heap of twisted metal and organic matter. The Kruthon were either dead or fleeing, their forces decimated by the blast. We did it," Jason gasped, his chest heaving as he leaned against a crumbling wall for support. I nodded, but the victory felt hollow. Something about the machine still gnawed at me, the strange, organic nature of it, the glowing spheres inside. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. As we regrouped with the rest of the strike team, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of something far more dangerous. "We need to report this to Commander Holt," I said, my voice grim. "There's more to these machines than we thought." Jason nodded, his expression serious. "Yeah, and I have a feeling we're going to need more than just explosives to win this war." The brief silence that followed the explosion felt like a reprieve, but it was only temporary. The Kruthon wouldn't stay down for long. We gathered ourselves, shaking off the dust and debris, our minds already calculating the next move. "Command's going to want a full debrief on that thing," Jason said as he checked the remaining rounds in his rifle. "But more importantly, they're going to need answers about what we found inside." My arm still throbbed from the shock I had received when touching the machine's inner panel. I flexed my fingers, the tingling sensation reminding me that this was far from over. The Kruthon weren't just deploying weapons, they were experimenting. The organic nature of their machinery hinted at a terrifying truth. They were learning, evolving, adapting to Earth's environment in ways we hadn't yet grasped. "They're not just invading," I said, more to myself than to anyone else. "They're trying to merge with our planet." Jason gave me a look, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "What do you mean?" I pointed back to the wreckage of the machine, still smoldering in the distance. The veins, the spheres inside it, was like that thing was part of a larger system. A living system. Maybe Earth's atmosphere isn't just toxic to them. Maybe they're trying to transform it, adapt to it. He looked back at the ruins of the machine, and then at me, the weight of my words sinking in. "You think they're trying to terraform Earth, or change themselves to survive here?" I nodded. "It's possible. But if that's true, we're in even more trouble than we thought. If they can adapt to our planet's conditions, then the atmosphere won't be a weapon anymore. It'll be their new home. Jason's face hardened. Then we need to get this intel to command. Fast. We moved quickly through the ruined streets of London, keeping low and out of sight. The Kruthon forces were scattered for now, but it wouldn't take them long to regroup. The streets were eerily silent, save for the occasional crackle of fire or the distant sound of collapsing buildings. The once great city was now a wasteland, its iconic landmarks reduced to rubble. We reached the rendezvous point where our extraction team was supposed to meet us, a partially intact underground bunker hidden beneath what used to be a museum. As we descended into the bunker, the dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. Commander Holt was waiting for us inside, his stern face illuminated by the glow of the tactical map displayed on the wall. He looked up as we entered, his eyes narrowing. "What the hell happened out there? We lost contact with you for a full hour." "We hit resistance," Jason said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his posture. "Kruthon patrols were thicker than we anticipated, and their tech it's changing, sir." "Changing how?" Holt's gaze shifted to me, sensing that I had more to offer. I stepped forward. "They're not just deploying machines anymore, Commander. They're integrating organic components into their technology. We found something inside one of their atmospheric conversion devices. It wasn't just a machine, it was alive. And it looks like they're trying to adapt to Earth's atmosphere." Holt's expression didn't change, but I could tell the news had shaken him. "You're suggesting they're trying to evolve to survive in our atmosphere?" "Yes," I replied. "The machine we destroyed was filled with some kind of neural network, small metallic spheres connected by organic matter. I think they're using it to either terraform Earth or change themselves to survive here. If they succeed, our biggest advantage, our atmosphere, will be gone." The room fell into a heavy silence. Holt ran a hand over his face, thinking hard. "This changes everything." Jason nodded. "We need to hit their core before they complete whatever they're doing. If they manage to crack the code of Earth's atmosphere, we won't stand a chance." Holt straightened, his voice firm. "Agreed. I'll notify command. In the meantime, you're going back out there." I blinked in surprise. "What? You want us to return?" Holt fixed his gaze on me, his eyes cold. "You just uncovered the biggest threat we've ever faced. We need more intel on how they're doing it, and we need it now. You're the only team that's been in close enough to see the process firsthand. You're going back, and this time you're bringing back samples." Jason grimaced. "With all due respect, sir, we barely made it out of there alive. How do you expect us to?" "I don't care how you do it," Holt interrupted, his voice sharp. "We're running out of time. The Kruthon are working fast, and if we don't stop them before they finish their little evolution experiment, Earth is done. You have 12 hours to gear up and head back into the field." Dismissed. We exchanged glances, but there was no point in arguing. Holt wasn't wrong. The stakes had never been higher, and we couldn't afford to hesitate. As we left the bunker, Jason pulled me aside, his brow furrowed. 12 hours, that's not enough time to prep properly." "I know," I replied, my mind racing. "But we'll make do. We don't have a choice." We headed back to the barracks, where the rest of the team was waiting for us. They looked up as we entered, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. "What's the word, Jacobs?" one of our newest recruits asked. His youthful face was marred with grime, but his eyes were still filled with determination. Jason didn't sugarcoat it. "We're heading back out. Commander Holt wants samples of whatever the Kruthon are using to evolve. We've got 12 hours to prepare." The room fell into silence as the gravity of the situation settled in. No one said a word, but the tension in the air was palpable. We had all seen the devastation the Kruthon had wrought, and the idea of going back into the heart of their operation was enough to shake even the most seasoned soldier. But we didn't have a choice. "All right," Jason said, breaking the silence. "Let's gear up. We're going back into the lion's den, and this time We're bringing the fight to them." The team nodded, their resolve hardening. There was no room for doubt or fear. We were humanity's last line of defense, and if we failed, there would be nothing left of Earth to save. Underscore 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 underscore. The 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation and planning. By the time we set out again, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ruined city. The greenish mist clung to the ground like a living entity, and the distant sounds of Kruthon activity echoed through the empty streets. Our objective was clear: infiltrate the Kruthon Command Center, gather samples of whatever they were using to adapt, and get out before they realized what we were doing. It was a suicide mission, but that was nothing new. As we moved deeper into enemy territory, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every corner we turned, every shadow we passed, I expected to see a Kruthon patrol bearing down on us. But the streets remained eerily quiet, the only sound the soft crunch of debris under our boots. "Something's not right," Jason muttered, his eyes scanning the darkened streets. "Where are they?" I didn't have an answer. The Kruthon were known for their relentless patrols, and the lack of activity was unsettling. It felt like we were walking into a trap. We reached the outskirts of the Kruthon Command Center, an imposing structure that loomed over the surrounding buildings, its alien architecture a stark contrast to the human ruins. The air around it was thick with the same green mist, and the faint hum of machinery buzzed in the distance. "Stay sharp," Jason whispered as we moved closer. "This is where things get dangerous." I nodded, my hand tightening around my rifle. The Kruthon had been one step ahead of us for too long, but this time we were going to turn the tables. The Kruthon Command Center loomed ahead of us, its structure bathed in an eerie green glow that seemed to pulse with life. The entire place hummed like a massive heart, beating in sync with the greenish mist swirling around it. This was their epicenter, the source of their terrifying adaptability, the place where they were evolving, changing. Jason motioned for us to fan out. We approached cautiously, knowing full well that a single misstep could be the last one we ever made. As we drew closer, I couldn't help but notice the strange organic material that made up the walls of the command center. It was a strange combination of metal and something living, almost like the surface of the building was breathing. It was unsettling, to say the least. "Keep it tight," Jason whispered, his eyes constantly scanning for movement. I nodded, my focus laser sharp. There was no telling what we would find inside, but we had a mission. Get in, gather samples, and get out. Simple on paper, but every instinct told me this was going to be anything but simple. We reached the base of the structure and found a breach in the outer wall, a section that had been blown open, likely during one of the earlier skirmishes. Jason signaled for us to enter, and we moved in without hesitation. The interior of the command center was even more unsettling than the exterior. The walls were lined with strange, pulsating tubes that ran through the entire structure like veins. The air was thick with a strange, almost metallic scent, and the green glow illuminated everything in an otherworldly light. It felt like we had stepped into the belly of a beast. "Stay focused," Jason said, his voice low. "We don't know what kind of defenses they have in here." We pressed on, moving deeper into the structure. Every step we took felt like a step further into the unknown. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hiss of the strange tubes lining the walls. I kept my weapon at the ready, my senses heightened to the max. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the heart of the command center, a massive chamber filled with strange machinery that seemed to be alive. At the center of the room was a large, organic-looking console, surrounded by more of those metallic spheres we had seen earlier. They were arranged in a pattern, connected by the same vein-like tubes we had seen throughout the structure. Jason approached the console cautiously, his eyes narrowing as he studied it. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where they're controlling everything. If we can get a sample from this, we might be able to figure out how they're doing it." I nodded, stepping forward to examine the spheres more closely. As I reached out to touch one of them, A sharp jolt of energy shot through my arm, sending me stumbling backward. "Careful," Jason barked, grabbing my arm before I could fall. "I'm fine," I muttered, shaking off the residual shock. But something about the energy felt different. It wasn't just electrical. It was like I had touched something alive, something sentient. Jason pulled out a small extraction device from his pack and began working on detaching one of the spheres from the console. As he worked, I kept watch, my eyes darting around the room for any signs of movement. The silence was unnerving. Just as Jason managed to remove the sphere, the entire room suddenly came to life. The veins in the walls pulsed with a bright green light, and a low, rumbling sound filled the chamber. "Jason, we need to move," I shouted, my heart pounding. He stuffed the sphere into his pack, and we bolted for the exit. But as we reached the doorway, the walls began to close in, sealing off our escape route. "Damn it," Jason cursed, slamming his fist against the wall. "They're locking us in." I scanned the room, searching for another way out. That's when I saw a small vent near the ceiling, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. "There," I pointed. "We can get out through that vent." Jason looked up and nodded. "Let's go." We scrambled up the side of the wall, using the strange veins as handholds to reach the vent. It wasn't easy. Every movement we made seemed to trigger some kind of reaction in the room, causing the walls to pulse and shift. But we had no choice. Jason reached the vent first and pried it open, helping me up before climbing in himself. The vent was cramped, and the air inside was thick with dust and that same metallic scent. But it was our only way out. We crawled through the vent, the rumbling sound growing louder behind us. I didn't want to think about what would happen if we didn't make it out in time. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the end of the vent and dropped down into a smaller, dimly lit room. The walls here were different, less organic, more mechanical. It seemed like we had reached a different part of the structure, one that hadn't been fully converted by the Kruthon's strange technology. Jason caught his breath and pulled the sphere from his pack, holding it up to the dim light. "We got it," he said, a hint of relief in his voice. "Now we just need to get this back to command." But as he spoke, the ground beneath us suddenly began to tremble. The entire structure was shifting, and the walls around us were starting to warp, as if they were alive. "They know we're here," I said, my voice grim. "We need to move. Now." Jason nodded, and we bolted for the nearest exit. The walls continued to warp and twist as we ran, the green glow intensifying with every step. It felt like the entire command center was trying to stop us from escaping. We burst through a doorway and found ourselves in what looked like a maintenance tunnel. The air was cooler here, and the green glow was fainter, but the tremors were still growing stronger. "Keep moving," Jason shouted, his voice barely audible over the rumbling. We raced down the tunnel, our footsteps echoing off the metal walls. I could feel the structure collapsing behind us, the weight of the Kruthon's defenses closing in. But we couldn't stop. Not now. After what felt like an eternity, we finally burst out of the tunnel and into the open air. The cool night breeze hit my face, and I sucked in a deep breath of relief. But there was no time to celebrate. The command center behind us was collapsing, the entire structure caving in on itself in a cloud of dust and debris. "Come on," Jason shouted, pulling me away from the wreckage. "We need to get to the extraction point." We ran through the deserted streets of London, our bodies aching from exhaustion, but fueled by the knowledge that we had what we came for. The sphere in Jason's pack could be the key to understanding the Kruthon's plans, but we had to make it out alive first. Underscore 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 underscore. As we approached the extraction point, I spotted the familiar silhouette of our transport ship hovering just above the ground, its engines humming quietly. The rest of our team was already on board, their faces tense as they watched us approach. "Get on!" the pilot shouted as the ramp lowered. We didn't need to be told twice. Jason and I sprinted up the ramp, collapsing into the seats as the ramp closed behind us. "Go, go, go," Jason shouted. The ship's engines roared to life, and we lifted off, leaving the ruined city behind us. I leaned back in my seat, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. "We did it," Jason said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We got what we needed." But as I looked out the window at the smoldering remains of the Kruthon Command Center, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The transport ship soared through the darkened skies, its engines humming steadily as we left the chaos of London behind. The city was a smoldering ruin below us, the fires and debris painting a grim picture of the aftermath. The greenish glow from the Kruthon Command Center had faded, but its shadow still lingered in my mind. The team was silent as we made our way back to the base. Exhaustion was etched into every face, but there was a quiet determination as well. We had risked everything for that sphere, and now it was up to us to make sure it counted. I looked over at Jason, who was examining the sphere with a mix of awe and concern. The thing was unlike anything I had ever seen, an intricate lattice of metallic and organic components, glowing faintly with a greenish light. It was beautiful and horrifying in equal measure. "How are we looking, Doc?" Jason asked, turning to our field medic, Dr. Harris. He had been quiet throughout the flight, his face pale from the exertion and stress. Dr. Harris glanced up from his medical kit. "We're all in one piece, but we need to get you all checked out as soon as we land. That shock you took from the sphere could have some lingering effects." Jason nodded, acknowledging the concern. "I'll make sure everyone gets looked at. But right now, the priority is getting this sphere to command." The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Approaching base in 5 minutes. Prepare for landing." The transport ship descended smoothly, touching down on the tarmac of our military base. The familiar sight of the base's perimeter defenses and towering structures provided a small comfort amid the uncertainty. We had made it back, but the real work was just beginning. As we disembarked, a team of scientists and military personnel was already waiting for us. They hurried forward, their eyes filled with curiosity and urgency. "Bring it over here," one of the scientists called, gesturing toward a high-tech lab set up in one of the base's secure facilities. "We need to analyze it right away." Jason handed over the sphere, his expression grim. "Be careful with it. We don't fully understand what we're dealing with." The scientist nodded, carefully placing the sphere into a containment chamber. I watched as they began to run initial scans and analyses, their faces growing more concerned with each passing minute. Commander Holt appeared from the crowd, his expression one of cautious relief. "Good work, team. I heard what happened. That command center collapsing was a close call." "Closer than we'd like," I replied, wiping the sweat from my brow. "But we got the sample. It's all in there." Holt nodded. "We'll need a full debrief, but for now, get some rest. We'll be examining that sphere for hours, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." We were led to a secure area where we could rest and recuperate. As we settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The Kruthon had shown us their ability to adapt and evolve, and if their plans went unchecked, Earth could be facing a new kind of threat. As I lay on my cot, I reviewed the day's events in my mind. The command center had been a hive of activity, and the Kruthon's technology was unlike anything we had encountered before. The way they had integrated organic and mechanical components was deeply unsettling. It was as if their entire existence was a continuous experiment, constantly adapting to its environment. Hours later, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the small windows of our quarters, we were summoned back to the lab. The scientists had completed their preliminary analysis, and they had some startling findings to share. The lab was abuzz with activity as we arrived. The sphere was encased in a transparent containment unit, surrounded by a series of readout screens and diagnostic equipment. Dr. Harris greeted us as we entered, his face lined with concern. "You might want to sit down for this. What we've found is disturbing." Jason and I took seats at the conference table, and the lead scientist began to explain. "What you brought back is more than just a weapon," he said, pointing to the sphere. "It's a biological interface, a living entity designed to integrate with and manipulate its environment. The Kruthon are using this technology to adapt to Earth's atmosphere on a cellular level." "How does it work?" Jason asked, his voice tight with concern. The scientist continued. "The sphere is essentially a neural network that interacts with the atmosphere. It's capable of analyzing and responding to environmental changes in real time. What we're seeing here is a system designed not just to survive, but to thrive in Earth's conditions. It's like they're trying to re-engineer their biology to fit into our world." I leaned forward, my mind racing. "So, they're not just trying to terraform Earth, they're trying to become a part of it." "Exactly," the scientist confirmed. "And if they succeed, they'll be able to integrate with our ecosystem in ways we can't even fully comprehend. This isn't just a war of technology, it's a battle for biological supremacy." Commander Holt's face was grim as he processed the information. "So, what's our next move?" The scientist paused, looking at the readout screens. "We need to disrupt their biological adaptation process. If we can find a way to interfere with their neural network, we might be able to halt their progress." Jason nodded. "And how do we do that?" The scientist hesitated. "We're working on that. It's going to require a targeted approach, potentially using a combination of biochemical agents and electromagnetic pulses to disrupt their system. But it's untested, and there's no guarantee it will work." Holt turned to us. "We'll need to gather more intelligence on their current status and see if we can implement this solution. In the meantime, get some rest and prepare for the next phase of the operation." As we left the lab, the weight of our situation settled heavily on my shoulders. The Kruthon were a formidable enemy, and their ability to adapt was more than just a challenge, it was a threat that could change the very nature of our world. The next phase of our mission would be critical. We had to find a way to stop the Kruthon from completing their adaptation process and turning Earth into their new home. But as we prepared for what lay ahead, one thing was clear: the fight for Earth was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The Kruthon command center's collapse had bought us some time, but the threat was far from neutralized. As our scientists worked on a way to disrupt the Kruthon's biological adaptation, we prepared for the possibility of further attacks. The urgency was palpable. Every moment we delayed gave the Kruthon more time to evolve and adapt. Our team had been put on high alert, and we were conducting regular patrols around the base, ensuring that no unexpected visitors slipped through our defenses. The base itself was a hive of activity, with scientists, engineers, and military personnel working tirelessly to analyze the sphere and develop a countermeasure. One evening, I found myself in the mess hall, trying to steal a few moments of rest. The usual clamor of voices and the smell of synthetic food filled the room, but I was too preoccupied to enjoy it. My thoughts kept drifting back to the sphere and what it represented. Jason joined me at the table, his expression serious. "Got a minute?" "Sure," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What's up?" Jason took a seat and looked around, making sure no one was listening. "I've been thinking about what we found. This adaptation thing, it's not just about survival, it's about control." I nodded, understanding his concern. "They're trying to make Earth their own. If they succeed, they'll have the perfect environment to launch their next phase of invasion." "Exactly," Jason said. "And the more we delay, the harder it's going to be to stop them. We need to act quickly." Just then, Dr. Harris walked in, his face etched with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We've got some results," he said, dropping into a seat beside us. "The preliminary tests on the sphere indicate that it's integrated with a kind of organic neural network that can communicate across vast distances." Jason raised an eyebrow. And it's highly adaptive," Harris continued. "We've identified some weaknesses in the network's communication protocols. If we can target these weaknesses, we might be able to disrupt their control over the adaptation process." I leaned in, intrigued. How would we go about that? Harris pulled out a tablet and brought up a series of diagrams. We've developed a prototype biochemical agent that could interfere with the neural network. It's designed to disrupt the signals being transmitted, essentially causing a feedback loop that could break their control. Sounds promising, Jason said, his eyes scanning the diagrams. But how effective is it? Harris sighed. It's untested. We think it could work, but we won't know for sure until we try it. The Kruthon are already adapting quickly. We don't have much time. Commander Holt's voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through our conversation. Team, we've received new intel. There's been a significant Kruthon presence detected near one of their secondary sites. We need to investigate and assess the situation. Get ready for deployment. The message was clear. Our next mission was about to begin. We finished our meal quickly, gathering our gear and heading to the briefing room where Holt awaited us. The map on the briefing room wall displayed a red dot marking the location of the Kruthon site. It was a remote facility located in a dense forest, far from the city. The Kruthon's presence there was unusual, and it was crucial that we determine what they were up to. We don't know what we're walking into, Holt said, addressing the team. But our objective is to gather intel and assess the situation. Be on high alert. We don't want any surprises. We nodded in unison, our faces set with determination. Jason and I exchanged a glance, both of us feeling the weight of the mission ahead. Our transport was prepped and ready, and within minutes we were airborne, heading toward the Kruthon site. The flight was tense, each of us lost in our own thoughts as we prepared for what lay ahead. The forest below was dense and dark, the trees casting long shadows across the landscape. As we approached the site, we could see the faint outline of the Kruthon facility, its structures partially concealed by the surrounding forest. The greenish glow from the previous command center was absent here, but the sense of danger was no less palpable. We touched down a safe distance from the facility and moved in on foot, our stealth suits blending with the darkness of the forest. The facility was surrounded by a high-tech perimeter, but we had trained for this. We approached the outer fence, using cutting-edge equipment to disable the security systems and slip through. Inside the perimeter, the facility was a sprawling complex of metal and glass, with numerous interconnected buildings and access points. We made our way to the central structure, the heart of the facility, using the shadows to our advantage. As we approached, we spotted a series of Kruthon guards patrolling the area. They were unlike any alien species we had encountered before, tall, with a chitinous exoskeleton and glowing eyes. They moved with a predatory grace, their senses alert for any signs of intruders. Jason signaled for us to hold back, and we observed the guards' patterns. We need to find a way to get past them without being detected, he whispered. Dr. Harris pulled out a small drone from his pack, setting it to hover silently above us. The drone's cameras provided a live feed of the area, helping us map out the patrol routes and identify potential entry points. After studying the feed, we identified a ventilation shaft that led into the central structure. It was our best chance of getting inside without encountering the guards directly. We made our way to the ventilation shaft, carefully removing the cover and climbing inside. The shaft was narrow and filled with dust, but it provided a clear path into the facility. We crawled through the shaft, emerging into a dimly lit maintenance corridor. The air inside was cooler and carried a faint mechanical hum. We followed the corridor, our footsteps muffled by the low-frequency noise of the machinery. Ahead, we could see a door leading into the main research area. Jason took point, carefully opening the door and peeking inside. The room was filled with various Kruthon equipment and data terminals. The walls were lined with tubes similar to those we had seen before, but they were more extensive and integrated into the facility's infrastructure. We moved silently through the room, our objective clear: gather as much information as possible and locate any additional samples or data that could help us understand the Kruthon's plans. As we searched, Dr. Harris came across a terminal displaying real-time data on the Kruthon's adaptation progress. The information was critical anomalies in their biological systems, real-time environmental adjustments, and ongoing experiments. "Got it," Harris said, downloading the data onto a portable drive. "This should give us more insight into their current status." Just as we were about to leave, a sudden alarm blared throughout the facility. The lights shifted to a harsh red, and the once stealthy environment was now in chaos. "Alert!" a voice announced over the intercom. "Intruders detected. All personnel report to security stations." "Move!" Jason ordered, leading us back toward the ventilation shaft. The facility was now in full lockdown mode, with security doors sealing off various sections. We made a frantic dash back to the shaft, our hearts racing as the facility's defenses closed in around us. The alarms grew louder, and the Kruthon guards were closing in. As we reached the shaft, I could hear the sound of footsteps and the clamor of the facility's security systems. We climbed back through the shaft, our movements hurried but controlled. The Kruthon were closing in, and we needed to get out before they found us. We emerged back into the forest, the cool night air a welcome relief. The transport was waiting for us, and we scrambled aboard, barely escaping the facility's reach. As we flew back to base, I looked out the window at the darkened forest below. We had managed to gather valuable intelligence, but the Kruthon were clearly preparing for something big. Whatever their plans were, they were far from over. Jason clapped me on the shoulder. "Good work. We've got what we need, and we're heading back." Dr. Harris was already reviewing the data, his face illuminated by the glow of his tablet. "We've got a lot to analyze. This information could change everything." As we made our way back to the base, the reality of our situation began to sink in. The fight was far from over, and the Kruthon's plans were more complex than we had imagined. But we had what we needed to fight back. Back at the base, the atmosphere crackled with urgency and resolve. The data we had retrieved from the Kruthon facility was under intense scrutiny. Scientists and analysts worked tirelessly, their faces lit by the blue glow of monitors, as they tried to decipher the encrypted information. The facility's alarm had been a close call, but we had managed to escape with crucial intelligence that might just turn the tide. Jason, Dr. Harris, and I were summoned to the command center, a stark room dominated by screens and control panels. The low hum of machinery filled the air, interspersed with a clacking of keyboards as analysts processed the data we'd recovered. The tension was almost tangible, and the air felt thick with the weight of our task. Commander Holt was waiting for us, his stern face showing both relief and an unwavering focus. "Good work out there," he said, acknowledging us as we entered. His gaze shifted to the tablet Dr. Harris was holding. "We've been reviewing the data, and it's revealing some critical insights into the Kruthon's adaptation process." Dr. Harris handed Holt the tablet. "The data indicates that the Kruthon are not merely responding to changes in their environment, they're predicting them. Their biological systems have evolved to integrate predictive algorithms, enabling them to adapt faster than we can react." Holt raised an eyebrow, processing this new information. "Predicting them? You mean they're thinking several steps ahead?" "Exactly," Harris confirmed. "Their adaptation isn't just reactive, it's anticipatory. They seem to be preparing for potential scenarios before we even realize they're a threat." Jason's face darkened with concern. "If they're anticipating our moves, it means they could be gearing up for something significant. We need to be ahead of them, not just react to their actions." Holt nodded in agreement. "We're formulating a multi-pronged approach. First, we'll deploy the biochemical agent we've developed to disrupt their neural network. Second, we need to identify their next major move and intercept it before they strike." I interjected, trying to piece together the fragmented clues. "Have we got any leads on where their next attack might be?" Holt shook his head. "Not yet, but we've flagged several high-priority targets based on the data we've collected. We're setting up surveillance and intelligence operations to keep an eye on these areas." Before we could delve deeper, the base's alert system blared to life, the shrill alarm piercing through our conversation. Red warning lights flashed, and the screens around us displayed a stark message: incoming Kruthon assault. Holt's face tightened as he absorbed the new information. Looks like they're making their move earlier than we anticipated. We need to mobilize immediately. Prepare for a defensive operation. With adrenaline surging through us, we raced to our designated positions. The base was already in a state of high alert, personnel moving quickly to reinforce defenses and secure vulnerable areas. The intensity of the situation was palpable, the urgency driving us all into action. Jason and I were assigned to the eastern perimeter, where the Kruthon were expected to strike first. We took our positions, scanning the horizon with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The sky above was dark, and the surrounding trees were eerily silent, as if holding their breath. Dr. Harris joined us, lugging a portable version of the biochemical disruptor. "This is our chance to test the prototype under real conditions," he said, his voice steady despite the situation. "If it works, we might be able to slow them down enough to buy ourselves some time." The tension was almost unbearable as we waited, every flicker of movement and every distant noise fueling our anxiety. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as we braced ourselves for the impending assault. Then, just as doubt began to creep in, the first wave of Kruthon forces appeared on the horizon. Their coordinated advance was a sight to behold, their forms illuminated by the harsh glare of our defensive turrets. The ground trembled slightly as they approached, their imposing presence a stark reminder of the fight ahead. "Here they come," Jason shouted over the noise, his voice carrying the urgency of the moment. "Get ready." The Kruthon charged forward, their exoskeletons reflecting the light in a menacing display. We opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts. The battlefield erupted into chaos, the air filled with the crackling of our weapons and the blinding flashes of Kruthon firepower. The Kruthon were formidable opponents, their advanced technology and sheer numbers posing a serious challenge. Despite our best efforts, their advance was relentless. Our defenses held for the moment, but the Kruthon were pushing hard, probing for weaknesses. "Deploying the biochemical agent," Harris called out, setting up the disruptor near the perimeter. He activated the device, and a wave of chemical interference began to spread towards the advancing Kruthon forces. The effect was almost immediate. The Kruthon's coordinated assault began to falter, their movements becoming erratic as the disruptor's chemical agents interfered with their neural networks. The once imposing line of attackers turned into a disorganized scramble, their attempts to regain control evident in their frantic movements. "Keep up the pressure," Holt's voice crackled over the comms. "We need to hold them off and prevent them from breaching the perimeter." Despite the initial success of the biochemical agent, the Kruthon were quick to adapt. Their response shifted as they tried to counter the effects of the disruptor. The battle was far from over, and our forces had to remain vigilant, ready to face whatever new tactics the Kruthon might employ. In the midst of the chaos, I found myself face to face with a Kruthon warrior. Its exoskeleton was scarred from previous battles, its eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. We engaged in a brutal close-quarters combat, the alien's strength and agility matched only by my own determination. The clash was intense. Each move was calculated, each strike a testament to our mutual skill and resolve. I managed to land a critical blow, the Kruthon collapsing under the force of my attack. But the victory was fleeting. More Kruthon were advancing, and the battle was far from over. Hours seemed to blur into one another, a continuous cycle of gunfire, explosions, and desperate combat. Despite our best efforts, the Kruthon managed to breach a section of the perimeter, pushing their way into the base. We fought tooth and nail to hold them back, our weapons and defenses stretched to their limits. Just as dawn began to break, signaling the end of our long night, the Kruthon forces started to withdraw. The remaining attackers retreated, their advance halted by our combined efforts. The base was battered, but still standing, the damage significant but manageable. As we surveyed the aftermath, Commander Holt approached us, his expression a mix of exhaustion and relief. "Good work, everyone," he said, acknowledging our efforts. "We held them off. But this is only the beginning. We need to regroup, assess the damage, and prepare for whatever comes next. Dr. Harris, still examining the biochemical disruptor, nodded in agreement. The agent worked, but the Kruthon adapted quickly. We'll need to refine it and develop new strategies to stay ahead. Jason and I exchanged a tired but determined glance. The battle had been fierce, but we had made progress. The Kruthon were formidable, but we were learning and evolving as well. As we made our way back to the command center, the weight of the ongoing conflict pressed heavily upon us. The fight was far from over, and the Kruthon's plans were still unfolding. But our experience had proven our resilience, and we were ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. Kale, who had been a vital ally, prepared to leave, his role in the conflict now complete. He paused before departing. "One thing that's become clear," he said, "is that underestimating humans is a grave mistake. Your species has shown remarkable resilience and ingenuity under pressure. The Kruthon learned that the hard way, and so did we." As Kale's ship vanished into the void, it was a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the galaxy. The presence of such an advanced ally had been crucial, but it also highlighted the strength and determination of humanity. The days that followed were a mix of recovery and preparation. The base's repairs continued, and life began to return to a semblance of normalcy. The lessons learned from the conflict were integrated into our defense strategies and research initiatives. We refined the biochemical agent and explored new ways to counter the Kruthon's rapid adaptability. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's resilience and resourcefulness, and it was clear that we were now a more capable and prepared force. Our victory was not merely a military achievement. It was a testament to our ability to confront and overcome daunting challenges. As I looked out over the repaired base, now a symbol of our hard-won triumph, I reflected on the broader implications of our experience. The conflict with the Kruthon had revealed both our strengths and our areas for growth. It had demonstrated our capacity for innovation, our willingness to collaborate, and our determination to protect our world and its allies. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, resilient, adaptable, and capable of rising to even the greatest challenges. The Kruthon had underestimated us, and it had cost them dearly. The message was clear: humanity was not to be underestimated. The base was a scene of controlled chaos. The recent assault had left its mark: scattered debris, damaged structures, and the persistent hum of repair drones weaving through the wreckage. Despite the disarray, a palpable sense of resolve hung in the air. We had weathered the storm, but the Kruthon had demonstrated just how dangerous and adaptable they were. Their attack had been a stark reminder of the high stakes we faced. Commander Holt had called an emergency briefing to assess the damage and strategize our next moves. The command center was abuzz with activity. Officers, scientists, and analysts filled the room, each absorbed in their tasks. The screens around us displayed real-time updates and strategic overlays, reflecting the urgency of our situation. "All right, let's get down to it," Holt's voice cut through the murmur of the room, commanding immediate attention. "We've sustained significant damage, but there are also valuable insights to be gained. Dr. Harris, what's the status of the biochemical agent?" Dr. Harris, his uniform still disheveled from the battle, stepped forward with a weary but determined expression. "The initial tests show that the agent effectively disrupts the Kruthon's neural network, but their rapid adaptation means we need to enhance its efficacy. We need to ensure it remains effective against their evolving tactics." Holt nodded thoughtfully, processing the information. "Understood. We'll prioritize this in our research. In the meantime, we need to address the immediate threat. The Kruthon are clearly not finished with us. They'll likely regroup and attempt another assault." Jason, who had been reviewing the battle reports, added, "We've seen their ability to adapt on the battlefield. We need to anticipate their next move and adjust our defenses accordingly." "Agreed," Holt replied. "We've identified several possible targets based on recent attack patterns. We need to focus on these areas and prepare for any potential breaches." The room buzzed with activity as teams were quickly organized. Some were assigned to reinforce the base's defenses, while others were tasked with gathering intelligence and setting up surveillance. Jason and I were assigned to scout the perimeter and ensure there were no additional surprises. We suited up in our tactical gear and headed out into the early morning light, which cast long, eerie shadows across the base. As we patrolled the area, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Kruthon had been aggressive, but their attacks seemed to have a strategic precision that hinted at a larger plan. The data we had collected was crucial, but it felt like we were only scratching the surface of their broader intentions. Jason broke the silence. "What do you think they're planning? It seems like they're building up to something significant." "I think you're right," I replied, scanning the surroundings. "The Kruthon have demonstrated impressive coordination and adaptability. Whatever their plan is, it's likely more complex than we initially thought." As we continued our patrol, we came across a section of the perimeter that had been partially destroyed. The damage was extensive, and it was clear that the Kruthon had focused their efforts on breaching this point. "Looks like they were concentrating on this area," Jason observed, examining the damage closely. "We should report this to the command center." We returned to the base and relayed our findings to Holt. His face, already etched with concern, grew even more serious. "Good work. We need to reinforce this section immediately and increase surveillance in the area. The Kruthon are likely to exploit any weaknesses they've identified." As the repair teams got to work, an unexpected visitor arrived at the base. Kale, a high-ranking alien diplomat from a neutral interstellar coalition. Kale's presence was both surprising and promising. He was an imposing figure, clad in a sleek silver exoskeleton with piercing blue eyes that conveyed both authority and calm. "Commander Holt," Kale began, his voice carrying a smooth, authoritative tone, "I've come to offer my assistance. The Kruthon's aggression threatens not only Earth, but the stability of the entire sector. We've encountered them before and may have information that could aid in your efforts." Holt regarded Kale with a mixture of skepticism and cautious optimism. "We appreciate your offer. Any additional support or intelligence would be invaluable." Kale nodded, extending a data pad toward Holt. "This contains detailed information on Kruthon tactics and strategies based on our previous encounters. It might provide insight into their current operations." Holt accepted the data pad and quickly scanned through the contents. "This is comprehensive. It looks like it could be very useful." Jason and I exchanged intrigued glances. Kale's arrival was unexpected, but if it meant gaining an edge against the Kruthon, it was a welcome development. "We'll integrate this information into our strategy," Holt said, turning to address the room. "In the meantime, we should continue reinforcing our defenses and preparing for the possibility of another attack." As we worked to incorporate Kale's data into our plans, I found myself reflecting on the broader implications of our conflict. The Kruthon were not merely a threat to Earth. They were part of a larger, interstellar struggle. The stakes were higher than ever, and our actions would have far-reaching consequences. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. We fortified our defenses, conducted drills, and analyzed the new data provided by Kale. Despite our best efforts, the Kruthon's next move remained uncertain, but we were determined to be prepared. Jason and I continued our perimeter patrols, maintaining a vigilant watch over the base. The days were long and filled with tension, but a growing sense of camaraderie and resolve emerged among the team. One evening, as I reviewed the latest intelligence in the command center, Dr. Harris approached with an important update. "We've refined the biochemical agent and tested it successfully in simulations. It's more effective now, but we need to deploy it in the field to confirm its efficacy." Holt nodded approvingly. "Excellent work. We'll need to coordinate a deployment strategy. If the Kruthon attack again, we'll use the enhanced agent to disrupt their adaptation process." As we prepared for the next phase of our operation, the atmosphere in the base was a mix of anticipation and resolve. The Kruthon had shown their strength, but we were ready to meet them head-on. The final preparations were underway, and the base was a hive of frantic activity. The atmosphere crackled with a mixture of anticipation and determination as we geared up for what promised to be a decisive confrontation with the Kruthon. Our enhanced biochemical agent was primed and ready for deployment, and the base's defenses had been fortified to withstand another formidable assault. Commander Holt called an emergency briefing to bring the team up to speed. His face was set in a mask of grim resolve. "This is it, everyone," he began, his voice resonating with an intensity that cut through the buzz of conversation. "We've made significant progress, but the Kruthon are relentless. They won't back down easily, and neither can we. We need to be prepared for anything." Dr. Harris, Jason, and I stood alongside Holt, our minds focused on the critical task ahead. The new strategy was meticulously planned. We would deploy the enhanced biochemical agent in strategic locations to target the Kruthon's neural network, aiming to disrupt their coordination and adaptability. Holt's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of each team member. "We've pinpointed the Kruthon's likely target points based on their recent movements and tactics. Our main objective is twofold: prevent them from breaching our defenses and disrupt their operations as effectively as possible." Kale, the alien diplomat from the Neutral Interstellar Coalition, joined us for the briefing. His imposing silver exoskeleton and piercing blue eyes seemed to cast a shadow over the room, a stark reminder of the broader stakes at play. "We will provide additional support from our forces," Kale announced, his voice calm yet authoritative. "Our ships are on standby, ready to assist in any way needed." With the plan solidified, we prepared for the impending assault. Jason and I took our positions at the eastern perimeter, the sector expected to be the focal point of the Kruthon's push. The sky was darkening, casting an ominous shadow over the base, as if nature itself was bracing for the conflict. Holt's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of each team member. "We've pinpointed the Kruthon's likely target points based on their recent movements and tactics. Our main objective is twofold: prevent them from breaching our defenses and disrupt their operations as effectively as possible." Kale, the alien diplomat from the Neutral Interstellar Coalition, joined us for the briefing. His imposing silver exoskeleton and piercing blue eyes seemed to cast a shadow over the room, a stark reminder of the broader stakes at play. "We will provide additional support from our forces," Kale announced, his voice calm yet authoritative. "Our ships are on standby, ready to assist in any way needed." With the plan solidified, we prepared for the impending assault. Jason and I took our positions at the eastern perimeter, the sector expected to be the focal point of the Kruthon's push. The sky was darkening, casting an ominous shadow over the base, as if nature itself was bracing for the conflict. As the first wave of Kruthon forces approached, the base's alert systems blared to life. The enhanced biochemical agent was deployed, and a thick cloud of interference spread rapidly across the battlefield. The Kruthon advanced with their characteristic precision, but the initial effects of the agent were soon evident. Their movements became erratic, their once coordinated assault faltering as their neural networks were disrupted. Despite the promising start, the Kruthon were quick to adapt. They began implementing countermeasures against the biochemical agent, their resilience becoming apparent as they pushed through our defenses with renewed vigor. The battle was fierce, the air filled with the roar of weapons and the crackle of energy blasts. Jason and I fought side by side, our focus unyielding as we repelled wave after wave of Kruthon attackers. The enhanced biochemical agent had given us a critical edge, but the Kruthon's ability to adapt and counter our tactics meant that the fight was far from over. Amidst the chaos, I could see Commander Holt coordinating the defense from the command center. His orders cut through the tumult of battle with clarity and precision. Kale's forces, with their advanced technology and strategic expertise, joined the fray, providing a crucial boost to our efforts. As we continued to press the Kruthon back, an ominous rumble shook the base. From the corner of my eye, I saw a squadron of Kruthon battle cruisers emerging from the depths of space. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A fleet of sleek, menacing ships bearing down on our position. Kale's eyes widened in recognition. "Those are Kruthon dreadnoughts," he said urgently. "They're massive and heavily armed. We need to act fast." The base's defense systems activated, and our sky was suddenly filled with a dazzling display of energy shields and laser fire. The dreadnoughts unleashed a torrent of firepower, their massive cannons spewing deadly beams of light that carved through the darkness. Our fighter squadrons scrambled into action, engaging the Kruthon ships in a desperate bid to protect the base. The space around us erupted into a breathtaking aerial ballet of ships darting through the stars, dodging laser blasts and exchanging fierce fire. As the first wave of Kruthon forces approached, the base's alert systems blared to life. The enhanced biochemical agent was deployed, and a thick cloud of interference spread rapidly across the battlefield. The Kruthon advanced with their characteristic precision, but the initial effects of the agent were soon evident. Their movements became erratic, their once coordinated assault faltering as their neural networks were disrupted. Despite the promising start, the Kruthon were quick to adapt. They began implementing countermeasures against the biochemical agent, their resilience becoming apparent as they pushed through our defenses with renewed vigor. The battle was fierce, the air filled with the roar of weapons and the crackle of energy blasts. In the chaos of the battle, the base's defenses strained under the onslaught. The dreadnought's heavy artillery pounded our shields, and the Kruthon fighters swarmed like a hive of angry bees, their relentless attacks pushing our forces to the brink. Jason and I, now fully immersed in the fight, moved with practiced precision. We fired our weapons with relentless determination, targeting the Kruthon ships with everything we had. The enhanced biochemical agent's effects were visible even in space. The Kruthon ships showed signs of malfunction as their systems struggled to cope with the disruption. Commander Holt's voice crackled over the comms. "We need to focus our fire on the dreadnought's weak points. Target their propulsion systems and weapon arrays. We can't let them breach our perimeter." I nodded to Jason, and we adjusted our targeting systems. We maneuvered through the chaos, firing with pinpoint accuracy at the vulnerable sections of the Kruthon dreadnoughts. Each hit caused a burst of debris and fire, but the Kruthon ships were relentless. In the midst of the battle, Kale's forces made a dramatic entrance. Their sleek, agile ships weaved through the Kruthon assault, launching precision strikes that tore through the enemy ranks. The Interstellar Coalition ships, equipped with advanced weaponry and tactics, turned the tide of the battle in our favor. The Kruthon forces, faced with mounting losses and increasingly ineffective attacks, began to falter. Their once coordinated assault became disorganized as they struggled to counter the combined onslaught of our forces and Kale's coalition. As the hours of relentless fighting wore on, the Kruthon dreadnoughts began to retreat. The once ominous silhouettes of the massive ships receded into the darkness of space, their departure a testament to the fierce resistance they had encountered. With the immediate threat of the Kruthon assault behind us, the base was left in a state of battered but enduring strength. The repair teams and medical personnel sprang into action, assessing the damage and tending to the wounded. Commander Holt, surveying the aftermath of the battle, addressed the personnel with a mixture of pride and relief. "We faced an overwhelming threat and emerged victorious through our strength and resilience. The Kruthon have been driven back, and we've proven that we can adapt and overcome." Dr. Harris, examining the data from the battle, wore an expression of cautious optimism. "The enhanced biochemical agent performed better than we anticipated, but the Kruthon's adaptability remains a challenge. We need to continue refining our strategies to stay ahead." Kale approached, his demeanor respectful and appreciative. "You've done well. The Kruthon's aggression is a threat to many, and your efforts have made a significant impact. We'll continue to support you in any way we can." Jason and I exchanged weary but satisfied glances. The battle had been grueling, but we had made a tangible difference. The Kruthon had been pushed back, and we had gained invaluable experience encountering their formidable capabilities. As we looked out over the base, still reeling from the aftermath of the conflict, it was evident that the fight was far from over. The Kruthon would regroup and return, and the struggle to protect Earth and its allies would continue. Jason and I fought side by side, our focus unyielding as we repelled wave after wave of Kruthon attackers. The enhanced biochemical agent had given us a critical edge, but the Kruthon's ability to adapt and counter our tactics meant that the fight was far from over. Amidst the chaos, I could see Commander Holt coordinating the defense from the command center. His orders cut through the tumult of battle with clarity and precision. Kale's forces, with their advanced technology and strategic expertise, joined the fray, providing a crucial boost to our efforts. The tide of battle began to shift as we pressed the Kruthon back. The combination of our reinforced defenses, the enhanced biochemical agent, and the support from Kale's forces started to turn the situation in our favor. Hours of relentless fighting began to show results, and the Kruthon forces, battered and disoriented, started to withdraw. The Kruthon's advance slowed as they struggled to adapt to the ongoing effects of the biochemical agent. The base, although heavily damaged, had held its ground. The immediate threat had been quelled, and the Kruthon had been driven back. As the Kruthon dreadnoughts retreated, the base and its defenders took a moment to regroup. The sky was still littered with the debris of destroyed ships, and the lingering echoes of laser fire reverberated through the air. The victory was palpable, but the battle was far from over. The Kruthon were known for their persistence and adaptability, and the retreat of their dreadnoughts could very well be a strategic ploy. Commander Holt remained at his post, issuing orders and coordinating with the repair teams. His face was a mask of stern resolve, but there was no denying the strain in his eyes. "Prepare for a counterattack," he instructed. "The Kruthon might regroup and launch another assault. We need to be ready for anything." Jason and I were still stationed at the eastern perimeter, our tactical gear smeared with grime and sweat. We exchanged a determined glance, knowing that our work was far from done. The base was holding, but the Kruthon were cunning, and their retreat might have been a mere ruse. The first signs of the Kruthon's next move came in the form of scattered radar blips, small, fast-moving objects skirting the edge of our sensor range. Holt's voice crackled over the comms. "We've detected incoming vessels, smaller ships, likely scouts or harbingers for a larger force. Prepare to engage." As we braced ourselves for the new wave, Kale's alien forces mobilized alongside us. The sleek ships of the Interstellar Coalition darted across the sky, their advanced sensors and weaponry scanning for the approaching threat. Kale himself was at the forefront, his presence commanding respect and attention. The scouts arrived in a flurry of activity, their small, agile craft darting around the base like angry hornets. They began launching precision strikes, targeting key infrastructure and weak points in our defenses. The base's automated turrets whirred to life, firing barrages of energy pulses at the intruders, but the Kruthon scouts were elusive, evading most of the fire. The real horror came soon after. A massive energy signature flared in the distance, an ominous, expanding sphere that signaled the arrival of another Kruthon dreadnought, even larger and more formidable than before. It emerged from the darkness of space with a menacing grace, its hull adorned with ominous, pulsating lights. Holt's voice was resolute. "That dreadnought is armed to the teeth. We need to bring it down before it can deploy its full arsenal. All units, prepare for a full-scale engagement." The base's remaining defenses were bolstered with additional energy shields, and fighter squadrons scrambled to intercept the approaching dreadnought. The air was filled with the roar of engines and the screech of energy blast as our forces engaged the dreadnought's formidable array of weapons. Jason and I, once more on the front lines, took up positions at a newly reinforced turret station. The dreadnought loomed large on our scanners, its massive cannons charging for a devastating assault. We fired at the smaller Kruthon vessels, trying to clear the way for our fighter craft to focus on the dreadnought. As the dreadnought's primary cannons fired, the base shuddered under the impact. The energy shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the brunt of the attack, but the shields were weakening. The dreadnought's precision strikes began to penetrate the outer defenses, and the base's structure creaked ominously. Kale's forces engaged the dreadnought with a coordinated assault. Their advanced weaponry unleashed a torrent of laser fire and plasma bolts, creating a brilliant display of lights and explosions. The dreadnought responded with its own defensive measures, deploying energy barriers and flares to obscure its position. The battle in space was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The Kruthon dreadnought, with its formidable firepower and advanced shielding, proved to be a formidable opponent. But the combined efforts of our forces, bolstered by Kale's technology and tactics, began to wear it down. The base's defenders fought valiantly, their efforts synchronized in a desperate bid to hold the line. The enhanced biochemical agent had proven effective, causing further malfunctions in the Kruthon systems. But the dreadnought's sheer size and firepower made it a daunting target. Holt's voice came through the comms again. "We need to focus on the dreadnought's propulsion systems. Disable its ability to maneuver, and we can take it down more effectively." Jason and I adjusted our targeting systems, aiming at the dreadnought's propulsion engines. With each successful hit, the dreadnought's movements became more erratic, its massive bulk struggling to maintain control. The tide of the battle seemed to turn as Kale's forces executed a daring maneuver. They launched a coordinated strike on the dreadnought's weak points, targeting its critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. The combined assault caused the dreadnought to stagger, its energy shields flickering as it absorbed the damage. As the dreadnought's defenses faltered, the fighter squadrons pressed their attack. With a final, decisive volley, the dreadnought's propulsion systems failed. The massive ship drifted helplessly, its power core destabilizing. The explosion that followed was a blinding flash of light. The dreadnought erupted in a spectacular display of fire and debris, the shockwaves sending tremors through the base. The Kruthon forces, now leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat in disarray. The battle's intensity gradually subsided, leaving behind a scene of devastation and triumph. The base was heavily damaged, but its defenders had held strong. The immediate threat had been neutralized, and the Kruthon had been forced to withdraw. In the aftermath, the base was a testament to the resilience and bravery of its defenders. Repair teams and medical personnel worked tirelessly, assessing the damage and tending to the wounded. Despite the heavy toll, there was a profound sense of accomplishment and unity among the team. Commander Holt addressed the personnel with pride and gratitude. "We faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious through our strength and resolve. The Kruthon have been driven back, and we've proven that we can adapt and overcome." Dr. Harris reviewed the battle data, his expression a mixture of relief and determination. "The enhanced biochemical agent performed exceptionally well, but we must remain vigilant. The Kruthon's adaptability is a challenge we need to continue addressing." Kale approached once more, his respect evident. "You've done well. The Kruthon's aggression is a threat to many, and your efforts have made a significant impact. We will continue to support you in any way we can." Jason and I exchanged weary but satisfied glances. The battle had been arduous, but we had made a tangible difference. The Kruthon had been repelled, and our experience in dealing with their formidable capabilities had grown significantly. In the aftermath of the battle, the base was a scene of controlled chaos. Repair teams worked tirelessly to assess and fix the damage, while medical personnel attended to the wounded. Despite the heavy toll, a sense of accomplishment and determination prevailed among the team. Commander Holt addressed the personnel, his voice filled with pride and relief. "We faced an overwhelming threat and emerged victorious through strength and resilience. The Kruthon have been driven back, and we've proven that we can adapt and overcome." Dr. Harris, poring over the battle data, wore an expression of cautious optimism. "The enhanced biochemical agent performed better than we anticipated, but the Kruthon's adaptability remains a challenge. We need to continue refining our strategies to stay ahead." Kale approached with a demeanor of respectful acknowledgement. "You've done well. The Kruthon's aggression is a threat to many, and your efforts have made a significant impact. We'll continue to support you in any way we can." Jason and I exchanged weary but satisfied glances. The battle had been grueling, but we had made a tangible difference. The Kruthon had been pushed back, and we had gained invaluable experience in countering their formidable capabilities. As we looked out over the base, still reeling from the aftermath of the conflict, it was evident that the fight was far from over. The Kruthon would regroup and return, and the struggle to protect Earth and its allies would continue. But for now, we had earned a moment of respite. We had faced the galaxy's deadliest chemical weapon, the Kruthon's relentless aggression, and emerged victorious. The battle was a testament to humanity's strength and resolve, a reminder that we were capable of confronting even the most daunting challenges. The base, once a chaotic battlefield, had settled into a hive of bustling activity. The immediate threat from the Kruthon had been repelled, but the aftermath was palpable. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and ozone, mingled with a persistent hum of repair drones working tirelessly. The conflict had left its mark not only on the base's physical structure, but on the personnel who had weathered the storm. Amidst the clamor and the efforts to restore normalcy, there was an undercurrent of cautious optimism. Commander Holt had called for a final debriefing, bringing together key personnel who had been instrumental in the battle. The room was filled with a mix of relief and contemplation as we gathered to reflect on the events that had unfolded. Dr. Harris, Jason, Kale, and I were present, each of us marked by the ordeal but united in our resolve. Holt's gaze swept over us as he began the debriefing. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of the experiences we had shared. "First and foremost," he started, "I want to extend my deepest gratitude to each of you. We faced a formidable enemy and emerged victorious. But as we move forward, it's crucial to understand what we've learned from this experience." Dr. Harris stepped forward, clutching a data pad that contained a summary of the biochemical agent's performance. His face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes were sharp with focus. "The enhanced agent proved effective in disrupting the Kruthon's neural networks," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a scientist who had seen his theories put to the test. However, their rapid adaptation highlighted the need for ongoing research and development. We need to continually innovate to stay ahead of their capabilities. Kale, the alien diplomat whose presence had been instrumental in our success, nodded in agreement. His sleek, silver exoskeleton gleamed under the room's lighting, and his piercing blue eyes reflected a deep understanding of the complexities of interstellar conflict. "Our observations corroborate your findings," he said, his tone measured and calm. "The Kruthon are a highly adaptive species, and their ability to quickly counter new threats is something that will need to be addressed in future encounters." Jason, ever the practical strategist, added his perspective. "We also learned the importance of coalition support. Kale's assistance and the advanced technology provided by the Interstellar Coalition played a crucial role in our success. Building alliances and sharing knowledge can significantly enhance our ability to respond to threats." I took a moment to reflect on our journey, the weight of our collective experiences settling in. "The Kruthon taught us that we can't rely solely on one strategy or technology," I said, my voice steady but tinged with the fatigue of a battle-weary soldier. "Adaptability and resilience are key." The battle was tough, but it underscored our capacity for innovation and cooperation. Holt addressed the group with a sense of resolve. His expression was one of determination, tempered with the wisdom of someone who had seen the cost of conflict firsthand. "We've shown that humanity is not only capable of defending itself, but also of adapting and growing from its experiences," he said. "This conflict has strengthened our resolve and highlighted the importance of preparation and collaboration." As we concluded the briefing, Kale prepared to depart. His role in the conflict was now complete, and his ship was waiting in orbit. "I will report our findings to the Interstellar Coalition," he said, his voice carrying the weight of diplomatic responsibility. "The information shared here will be invaluable in preparing for future threats. Earth has proven itself a formidable ally." Jason and I watched as Kale departed, his sleek craft vanishing into the vast expanse of space. His departure was a poignant reminder of the interconnectedness of the galaxy. The presence of such an advanced and supportive ally had been crucial to our victory, but it also underscored the broader reality of our place in the universe. In the days following the battle, the base continued its repairs. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the scars of the conflict were still visible. The lessons learned from the battle were not forgotten. Instead, they were integrated into our defense strategies and research initiatives. The development of the biochemical agent continued, with new enhancements aimed at countering the Kruthon's rapid adaptability. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's resilience and resourcefulness. It was clear that we were now a more capable and prepared force. Our victory was not just a military achievement. It was a testament to our ability to confront and overcome daunting challenges. We had proven ourselves as a force to be reckoned with, capable of rising to even the greatest challenges. As I looked out over the repaired base, now a symbol of our hard-won triumph, I reflected on the broader implications of our experience. The conflict with the Kruthon had revealed both our strengths and our areas for growth. It had demonstrated our capacity for innovation, our willingness to collaborate, and our determination to protect our world and its allies. The galaxy had learned that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, resilient, adaptable, and capable of rising to even the greatest challenges. As we prepared for whatever lay ahead, we did so with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The victory we had achieved was not merely a defense of Earth, but a statement to the galaxy. It was a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, we had the strength and ingenuity to prevail. We had faced the galaxy's deadliest chemical weapon, the Kruthon's relentless aggression, and emerged victorious. With the immediate threat behind us, we turned our attention to rebuilding and preparing for the future. The lessons learned from this conflict would shape our approach moving forward, ensuring that we remained vigilant and prepared for any threats that might arise. The battle had been a defining moment for humanity and the galaxy, a testament to our ability to confront and overcome even the most daunting challenges. In the quiet moments of reflection, as the base hummed with the sounds of repair and recovery, I realized that our victory was not just about defeating an enemy. It was about forging a path forward, one where humanity stood as a beacon of strength and resilience. We had faced the Kruthon's relentless aggression and emerged not only as survivors, but as a symbol of what could be achieved when faced with the greatest of challenges. The galaxy had seen us rise to the occasion, and as we looked toward the future, we did so with a sense of determination and hope. Our journey was far from over, but the victory we had achieved was a powerful reminder of our capacity for greatness. And as we prepared for whatever lay ahead, we did so with the knowledge that, together, we were ready to face the challenges of the future. The battle with the Kruthon had left scars not just on the base, but on Earth itself. The conflict had tested humanity's resolve, but as the dust settled and the immediate threat receded, a new chapter began, one of recovery, reflection, and renewal. In the early hours of the morning following the battle, the sky over the base was a dull gray, a somber reminder of the recent conflict. The base, though battered, stood resilient, a testament to the strength and determination of those who had defended it. Outside, the fields surrounding the base were a patchwork of scorched earth and debris, but the repair teams were already hard at work, transforming the landscape back to a semblance of normalcy. Commander Holt, now a figure of calm amidst the chaos, walked through the damaged sections of the base. His uniform was streaked with dust and grime, but his expression was one of quiet determination. He moved with purpose, checking on the progress of repairs and offering words of encouragement to the personnel who worked tirelessly to restore the base to its former glory. Dr. Harris, the scientist whose enhanced biochemical agent had played a crucial role in the battle, was deeply immersed in data analysis. His lab was a flurry of activity as his team sifted through the results of their recent experiments, refining their work to ensure they were prepared for any future threats. Despite the exhaustion etched on his face, Harris was driven by a sense of urgency and a desire to ensure that their technology would be ready for the next challenge. Jason, ever the strategist, was busy coordinating the logistical aspects of the recovery. He had taken on the task of overseeing the distribution of resources and ensuring that the base's defenses were rebuilt stronger than before. His leadership was instrumental in maintaining order amidst the disarray, and he worked closely with the repair teams to address the most critical issues first. As the base slowly recovered, so did the world beyond its walls. The impact of the battle had been felt globally, and governments around the world scrambled to assess the damage and provide aid where it was needed. The Kruthon's aggression had left a trail of destruction, and the international community faced the monumental task of repairing both the physical and emotional scars left by the conflict. In cities around the globe, relief efforts were underway. Teams of engineers, architects, and construction workers mobilized to repair damaged infrastructure. Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients, and medical personnel worked around the clock to tend to the wounded. The conflict had brought nations together in a way that few events had before, as countries offered support and resources to help in the recovery process. The media buzzed with reports and stories of heroism, sacrifice, and resilience. News outlets shared images of the devastation, but also of the remarkable recovery efforts. Stories of individuals who had gone above and beyond to help their fellow citizens emerged, and the world watched as humanity demonstrated its strength and unity in the face of adversity. Amidst the recovery, a sense of optimism began to take hold. The base's successful defense against the Kruthon had provided a glimmer of hope, and people around the world drew inspiration from the resilience displayed by those who had fought on the front lines. Commander Holt, in a speech broadcast globally, addressed the world with a message of unity and determination. "We have faced an unprecedented threat and emerged victorious," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "But our work is far from over. The challenges we face now are different, but no less significant. We must come together to rebuild, to recover, and to prepare for the future." His words resonated with people everywhere, and a renewed sense of purpose emerged. Communities banded together, volunteering their time and resources to aid in the recovery efforts. Fundraisers, charity events, and volunteer initiatives sprang up across the globe, each contributing to the collective effort to heal and rebuild. In the aftermath of the battle, the importance of alliances was more evident than ever. The support provided by the Interstellar Coalition, led by Kale, had been instrumental in our victory. As Earth continued its recovery, efforts were made to strengthen these alliances and build new ones. Kale's reports to the Interstellar Coalition highlighted Earth's resilience and the lessons learned from the conflict. The data shared about the Kruthon's tactics and the effectiveness of the biochemical agent provided valuable insights for future encounters. In turn, the interstellar community offered continued support, sharing advanced technologies and strategic advice to bolster Earth's defenses. Diplomatic delegations from various interstellar factions visited Earth, establishing new agreements and reinforcing existing partnerships. The exchange of knowledge and resources was crucial in preparing for any future threats and ensuring that humanity remained a key player in the galactic arena. As the months passed, the focus shifted from immediate recovery to long-term growth and development. The conflict with the Kruthon had left its mark on humanity, but it had also provided an opportunity for reflection and growth. Dr. Harris and his team continued their work on the biochemical agent, integrating the lessons learned from the battle into their research. The goal was not just to develop a more effective weapon, but to advance scientific understanding and enhance humanity's ability to adapt to new challenges. Jason's work on the base's defenses led to the implementation of new strategies and technologies designed to counter a range of potential threats. The experience had highlighted the importance of adaptability and resilience, and Jason was determined to ensure that the base and, by extension, Earth was prepared for whatever might come next. The broader societal impact of the conflict also became apparent. The battle had brought people together, fostering a sense of unity and cooperation that transcended national and cultural boundaries. The global response to the crisis demonstrated humanity's capacity for compassion and solidarity, and it laid the foundation for a more collaborative future. The recovery efforts spread far beyond the base, touching every corner of the globe. In cities and towns across the world, life began to return to normal, though the memory of the conflict remained vivid. The destruction wrought by the Kruthon had left deep scars, but these were met with a spirit of resilience and determination. In New York City, the skyline bore the marks of the recent battle, a reminder of the danger that had once threatened its inhabitants. Yet, amidst the rubble and shattered glass, construction crews worked diligently to restore the city's iconic buildings. Volunteers and citizens united in the effort to clear debris and rebuild their communities, their collective spirit a powerful symbol of recovery. In Tokyo, the devastation had been significant, with many buildings reduced to ruins. Yet, as the sun rose over the city, it illuminated a scene of transformation. Temporary shelters were set up, and citizens worked together to provide aid and support. The Japanese government, alongside international organizations, facilitated rapid reconstruction efforts, ensuring that affected areas received the help they needed. Across the world, similar stories unfolded. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower had survived the conflict, but nearby neighborhoods had been heavily damaged. French citizens and international volunteers came together to repair homes and businesses, demonstrating a commitment to rebuilding and revitalizing their beloved city. The global response to the Kruthon threat had showcased the power of international collaboration. Nations had set aside their differences to work together, and this spirit of cooperation continued long after the battle ended. The United Nations convened an emergency summit to address the long-term implications of the conflict. Leaders from around the world gathered to discuss strategies for future defense and recovery, and to establish a new framework for interstellar diplomacy. The summit emphasized the need for continued collaboration and mutual support, ensuring that humanity could face future challenges as a united front. The Interstellar Coalition, led by Kale, played a crucial role in these discussions. The coalition's involvement had been instrumental in the battle's outcome, and their continued support was vital for Earth's future. Diplomatic channels between Earth and other interstellar factions were strengthened, with agreements made to share intelligence, technology, and resources. The battle with the Kruthon had accelerated technological advancements on Earth. The need to counter the Kruthon's rapid adaptation had spurred innovations in defense and research. Dr. Harris and his team made significant progress in refining the biochemical agent. The new version was more effective, with enhanced properties that could disrupt the Kruthon's neural networks even more efficiently. This advancement not only improved Earth's defensive capabilities, but also contributed to scientific understanding of alien biology. Jason's work on the base's defenses led to the development of new technologies designed to counter a range of potential threats. The integration of advanced shielding and adaptive defense systems became a priority, ensuring that Earth's defenses were state-of-the-art and capable of handling future challenges. The Kruthon conflict had a profound impact on global culture and society. The shared experience of facing a common threat had fostered a sense of unity and solidarity among people from different backgrounds. In schools and universities, curricula were updated to include lessons on the recent conflict. Students learned about the bravery and resilience demonstrated by those who had defended Earth, and discussions about the importance of collaboration and innovation became central to education. The arts also reflected the impact of the battle. Musicians, writers, and artists created works inspired by the conflict, capturing the emotional and psychological effects of the war. These works served as a tribute to the bravery of those who had fought, and as a reminder of the importance of resilience in the face of adversity. As Earth continued its recovery, the focus turned to preparing for the future. The lessons learned from the Kruthon conflict shaped strategies and policies aimed at ensuring that humanity remained vigilant and prepared for any potential threats. The creation of a Global Defense Council became a priority. This council, composed of experts from various fields, was tasked with developing comprehensive defense strategies and ensuring that Earth's defenses were continually updated. The Council also worked to strengthen ties with the Interstellar Coalition and other allies, fostering a network of support and collaboration. Research into advanced technologies continued, with a focus on developing new defense systems and enhancing existing ones. The aim was not only to counter potential threats, but also to advance scientific understanding and improve Earth's technological capabilities. The legacy of the Kruthon conflict was one of resilience, collaboration, and innovation. The battle had tested humanity's limits, but it had also demonstrated the strength and determination of individuals and nations working together. The conflict had shown that humanity was capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges. The lessons learned from the battle had shaped a new era of global cooperation and technological advancement, setting the stage for a brighter and more secure future. As Earth looked toward the horizon, it did so with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The experience of facing the Kruthon had forged a stronger, more united world, prepared to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. In the end, the battle had been a defining moment for humanity and the galaxy. It was a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity had the strength and ingenuity to prevail, and as the world prepared for the future, it did so with the knowledge that, no matter what lay ahead, humanity was capable of rising to meet any challenge with unwavering determination. As Earth continued its recovery, there was a palpable sense of hope and optimism. The conflict with the Kruthon had been a defining moment, but it had also been a catalyst for positive change. The world had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, more united, and better prepared for the future. In the quiet moments of reflection, as the base and the world around it slowly returned to normal, it was clear that the battle had been more than a conflict, it had been a turning point. The experience had taught valuable lessons about resilience, adaptability, and the importance of collaboration. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength and determination, and the response to the Kruthon's aggression had set a precedent for future interactions with the interstellar community. As Earth looked toward the future, there was a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to building a safer, more resilient world. The battle had been a testament to humanity's ability to rise to even the greatest challenges, and as the world moved forward, it did so with the knowledge that, no matter what lay ahead, humanity was capable of confronting and overcoming the most daunting obstacles. In the end, the conflict with the Kruthon had been a defining moment for Earth and the galaxy. It was a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity had the strength, ingenuity, and resolve to prevail, and as Earth prepared for whatever lay ahead, it did so with a renewed sense of hope and confidence, ready to face the future with unwavering determination.